let me bring in my guests. We are joined with Robert Fatima. If I can pull this up, there we are. We're joined with Robert Fatima. He is author, journalist, and activist working for peace and social justice. He is author of the new book, Settler Colonialism in Palestine and Kashmir. You are the person to talk to, Robert. How you doing? You doing okay today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Why was Trump able to get the American hostage release, but Joe Biden wasn't? And just to add one more point to that, this is Netanyahu giving a speech about the release of the American hostage. And I want to point something out at the end of the speech, because another flagrant liar, by the way, not to mention genocidal maniac.
הלחץ המדיני שהפעיל הנשיא טראמפ, הדבר הזה זה שילוב מנצח. דיברתי היום עם הנשיא טראמפ, הוא אמר לי, אני מחויב לישראל, אני מחויב להמשיך לעבוד איתך בשיתוף פעולה הדוק, כדי להשיג את כל מטרות המלחמה.
Right, I can't stand to listen to him talk. The truth of it is that Aiden, the hostage that was released, is not even going to see Netanyahu. It's not even going to see him. I mean, Netanyahu is making this argument like, oh, we worked together and I talked to Trump and blah, blah, blah. When it came down to it, he's not visiting him. He's going to see Trump, because from his point of view, Trump is the one that got him out. Netanyahu is the one that kept him in hostage for all of those years. Just amazing. Yes. Why couldn't Joe Biden get him released, but Trump could?
As you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Joe Biden was both weak and incompetent. The United States has tremendous leverage over Israel because the amount of foreign aid it gives to Israel every year, more than it gives to all other countries combined, and it protects it on the international stage in the United Nations by vetoing any resolution critical of the Israeli regime. The last time such a resolution passed was during the term of Barack Obama, when the United States abstained from a vote. Didn't vote for it, but at least didn't veto it. The United States at any time during the Biden administration or now could have said, no more weapons. You have to stop this genocide immediately. No more weapons. We're going to support resolutions in the United Nations that stand for international law and human rights. Israel would have stopped immediately. And those tens of thousands of people, and as you mentioned earlier, that's a very low estimate, the 50-some thousand. It's believed to be way over 100,000 people dead, many of them still buried in the rubble. That would have stopped in November of 2023 if Joe Biden had simply used the leverage that the United States has over Israel to do so. He chose not to. Biden has said on more than one occasion that he's a Zionist, which means he believes in the concept of a greater Israel and the idea of God's chosen people. And anyone who wants to run governments according to the Bible needs to not be in a position of authority. I have no problem with the Bible. I believe in the Bible, but that's for my personal usage, my personal behaviors, it's not my place to tell other people they need to follow it, or they need to look at these ancient writings and say, because of those, this land of Palestine, where Palestinians have lived for centuries, they have to leave and let someone else, some European residents, take their homes. This is nonsense, but this is what Joe Biden apparently believes. And this is why, for the last 20 months, the entire time of his term, after the genocide started until the end of it, that he did nothing. He chose not to do anything. He could have. He simply chose not to.
You are absolutely 1,000% correct. I want to show something else. This is Israeli, or former, I should say, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. He was on CNN on Amapur. I'm going to play a small bit of this, and I want to get your take. Well, I can play the whole clip, but I want to get your take on what he's saying, because I want to follow it up with something else that was released. I guess this was either last night or today, that I want to say it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's been a lot of people talking about a civil war in Israel. And, I'm always skeptical of those claims about people going at it in regards to a country and breaking down the civil war. But disagreements, vicious political disagreements, yes. And it seems to be coming out at this point. This is the clip.
I will say it. The real enemy that we have is not Iran, which is an enemy. It's not Hezbollah, which is an enemy. Well, it's not Hamas, which is an enemy. The real enemy is from within. The messianic, crazy, extreme groups of Israelis that think that they can kick out the Palestinians and annex their territories. I'm fighting against them, I'm campaigning against them, and I think that this is incumbent upon the Israeli present government and Netanyahu. Unfortunately, Netanyahu depends on them politically to the extent that he closes his eyes and he allows them to do things which are totally intolerable and unacceptable.
All right. I want to piggyback that with this that came out. Over 550 retired senior Israeli security officials, including former head of Mossad, former head of Shin Bet, former deputy chief of the Israeli army, have sent a letter to President Trump urging him not to listen to Netanyahu about the war in Gaza. They called him to secure the release of all the hostages in the war and ongoing death and suffering of the innocent civilians in Gaza, launch a post-Hamas political plan for Gaza, reject any attempt to annex the West Bank. Isn't that amazing? Like, I got to be honest with you, from my point of view, all these people are fascists. I would be shocked if there were 500 people that was willing to even do that, let alone people in the security services. Okay, I've been made aware. But they are effectively begging Trump, hey, we need your help. This guy's out of control. He's a maniac. He's, give me your take on this. And why do you think they would do this? I mean, this has been going on for over a year, 2 years at this point, where they've effectively been massacring the population of citizens. And even when that rape was displayed on TV, by the way, the majority of the population agreed with it. Mm-hmm. So how do I balance these things? Like in my mind, in any kind of workable point of view of Israel, how do I balance them saying this man is out of control, he's a maniac, with these other polling and data that comes out of Israel?
It is certainly a dilemma and seems like a contradiction when these former officials, high-ranking officials, are condemning what Netanyahu is doing and urging President Trump to not support him. Now, of course, when anyone has recourse to President Trump for anything positive, they're in a desperate situation because he's totally unpredictable and unreliable. But as you mentioned, the Israeli population in general supports the horrendous crimes that Israel is committing. They are taught in their schools that the Palestinians, as they're growing up, that the Palestinians are not equal to them, that they can stay in the country as their servants, as their slaves, as second-class citizens, but they are not equal in a human, as human beings as they are, as the Israelis are. So this is deeply ingrained in the Israeli psyche. Now, these former political officials who are urging Trump to take a different tact, they are looking at the big picture. They're looking at what the future of Israel is going to look like if it doesn't cease its current behaviors. The Israeli economy now is in tatters, as we know. There's been a tremendous amount of businesses leaving Israel. Travel to Israel is way down. What was the other point? The people have left their homes because of bombings on the border with Lebanon. So there's been a lot of internal unrest in Israel. And these former officials that you mentioned that wrote that letter, they're seeing this and they're saying this is not sustainable. If we want to have a peaceful and secure country, then we need to respect our borders and other people's borders, and we need to cease genocide because it is having a tremendous negative impact on Israel, on the international stage, as well as domestically, because there is, with the hostages, massive demonstrations opposing Netanyahu's policies in the war because the people want the hostages back. The people of Israel, they may not see the Palestinians as equal, and they don't, but they also know that IDF bombs have killed some of the hostages, and there are very few, I think about 20 living hostages remaining, and their families and a lot of other Israelis are desperate to have them home. So the fact that these former officials have implored Trump to take a different path with Netanyahu is very telling, because they, as I said, they're seeing the future of Israel being very much compromised by the current regime and its actions.
I mean, so that's not really about the genocide per se. That's more so about what they consider to be their country falling apart as a result of the genocide. And I make a distinction between the two. Meaning, one is, do we really care of what's happening to these people who we've been killing and slaughtering and starving to death? Okay, well, the answer may be no. But do we care about our country? Yes. If that makes sense. Like, is that what I'm getting in this? Like, they're making a distinction in their minds. Okay, if we need to keep Israel as a actual entity, we can't do what we're doing to these people. We may think this way about them. We may feel this way about them. We may not even care all that much. But if we want Israel to survive as a political entity, this has to change.
That's absolutely correct. They don't care. Israelis in general, polls have shown, don't care about the Palestinians. They not only do they not care, they favor the genocide. They say, yes, kill them all or expel them, just get rid of them so we can live in Gaza and the West Bank. But the forces, the former officials, saying this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work the way you think it's going to work. It's not just a matter of killing them all and then we have a bigger country and everything's rosy. It's not going to work like that. The diplomatic damage that has been done to Israel thus far is going to be very hard to overcome in the next several years. And the people in Israel are opposing the government for other reasons. They should be out demonstrating in the streets against the genocide, against the fact that trucks are waiting to cross the border, filled with food, medical supplies, and so on. But Israel is blocking them. The people of Israel should be demonstrating for an end to that blockade, that blockage. But they're not. They're demonstrating to get the hostages back. So your point is very well taken. They don't care what happens to the Palestinians. But if ending the genocide will get the hostages back, then they want to end the genocide. And that's what it comes down to.
What do you make of these rumors? I'm going to call them rumors, potentially leaks, that Donald Trump and Netanyahu are at odds in one sense, that the U.S. government sidelined Israel in order to get that hostage release, and is even sidelining Israel to directly negotiate with Hamas with the idea of getting food and everything else into Gaza.
Yeah, this is a real slap in the face to Netanyahu. The U.S. is talking about some method of bringing aid in. But again, the U.S. could simply tell Israel, the trucks are going in, or you're not getting any more aid from us, and we're going to start supporting sanctions against Israel. But the U.S. government isn't doing that. Hopefully, it will in the future. But this is the fact that even this hostages was released without any input or any information from Netanyahu is, again, very telling. The United States government under Trump right now, and again, as you mentioned earlier, this is no praise of Trump because I think he's a terrible president, but he for his own political reasons, he wanted to get this hostage home, and so he did what he had to do, and that included sidelining Netanyahu, because Netanyahu would like very much to continue to have a U.S. or an American hostage in Palestine. That gives him leverage. Always trying to rescue the American hostage, and because America is his great ally, et cetera, et cetera. But now that tool is gone because that hostage has been released. So the fact that there are rumors, as you mentioned, that there is a rift between the two, Netanyahu, much more intelligent than Trump, is going to try to spin this in some way, as he did in that clip you showed. Oh yes, I've talked to President Trump and we're so happy about this, and et cetera, et cetera. But he knows that he has to play the game a little bit differently because Trump is so unpredictable, and Trump has made a move that Netanyahu didn't expect. So now we'll see what happens next.
It was. See, I don't know what's real in this. I put it that way. There are leaks that are coming out that are saying, oh, these two are at odds. AIPAC has been frozen out of the Trump administration, that Trump avoided putting in certain people into his administration because he didn't necessarily want the influence in regards to, let's say, war with Iran, for example. And yet he is maximizing demands to Iran. So it's like, for example, the Yemen issue. Okay, so Donald Trump made a deal with Ansar Allah to not hit American ships. And this was the reporting that came out of the New York Times, which is humiliating. The notion that $1 trillion military gets beat by what New York Times call a band of rebels is mind-blowing. And yet we lost this war with Yemen. We wanted to pacify Yemen to prevent them from attacking shipping lanes and attacking Israel. And we were not able to do that. The best that Donald Trump got out of it was nearly having F-35 shot out the sky, nearly having the ship hit and potentially sunk by missiles and drones, having multiple fighter craft fall off the ship, meaning they spent $1 billion. They were using so much precision-guided missiles that they thought that they were going to be at a lack for any kind of war that takes place against China. Like, think about, like, your stated objectives. You have 2 aircraft carriers, not just 2 aircraft carriers. You also have, of course, Britain helping you out. You have Israel helping you out in regards to some of the bombing campaigns. And yet you can't get air superiority. You were not able to get the intelligence that you wanted. And you got to the point where the pain threshold became so bad that you pulled out and screamed victory. And they're continuing to fire missiles at Israel. That's a loss.
Yeah. What did Trump accomplish? Really nothing. The Houthis have said
he accomplished one thing. He murdered a lot of civilians.
That is true. But as far as the negotiation, what he in negotiations, he did get the agreement that they wouldn't fire on U.S. ships, but he didn't get any other agreement about firing on Israeli ships or disrupting trade in other ways. And the Houthis have said from the start, this is because of the genocide in Gaza. As soon as Israel stops the genocide, it will stop its disruption of the shipping lanes and so on. But Trump wasn't so interested in that. Trump doesn't want to get into a war. He's desperate to win the Nobel Peace Prize like Obama did. So he said when he was running for election that he was going to end the Ukraine war in a day. And of course, he's later said it was more difficult than he thought. And he initially said that Israel should finish the job in Gaza. And what that means for Israel, of course, is the complete annihilation of the Palestinian people. And now he's talking about bringing in food and going around Israel, which again, as I mentioned earlier, isn't necessary to do because he could just demand that Israel open the borders. But he's looking for areas where he can sidestep, if that's the right word, countries that are on the verge of war. Even the negotiations with Iran are continuing because he doesn't want to have a war with Iran. The fact that the United States is even indirectly dealing with Hamas is remarkable because during the Biden administration and even during the earlier administrations, Obama, I think going back to Clinton, there was, we don't negotiate with terrorists, and we have designated Hamas a terrorist organization. Of course, terrorism is in the eye of the beholder. One person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. But the fact that Trump and the U.S. government is now negotiating with Hamas for an end to the war, or the end to the genocide, it's not a war, is in itself remarkable. But we have to remember in all this, Donald Trump is not looking to respect international law and human rights. He's looking for what's going to make him look good, and he covets a Nobel Peace Prize.
But see, I can't tell if the negotiations with Iran are stalking horse for potential conflict and to justify conflict. And the reason why I say that is, people are leaking that Netanyahu and Trump are at odds. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows, right? I agree with you that he does seem to be taking certain steps. So, example, the Ansar Allah thing, effectively, if you want to fire at Israel, God bless you, just don't fire at American ships. Okay, that took Israel apparently by surprise. The negotiation with the Saudis, where he says, okay, we'll give you the power plant, you don't have to recognize Israel. Okay, again, that's pretty astonishing. That was something that Joe Biden wasn't willing to do. So all of these things were against what Israel would consider their interests. And the negotiations with Iran, again, something that Israel considers against its interests. But the problem that I have with it is Trump, for one, starts with this idea that he's going to attack Iran if he can't get a deal. Then he maximizes what he wants in the deal in a way that Iran was never going to accept, said they weren't going to accept, and said they weren't going to accept the bullying. So you've put yourself in a position now that even though you are telling people, oh, I have odds with Netanyahu, you're about to go to war with the country for Israel because it's not for the United States, and lying in order to do it. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Oh, there are weapons of mass destruction in Iran. Oh, we're going to negotiate with Iraq in order to, work it out. Oh, we're now going to negotiate with Iran. Oh my God, the deal fell apart with Iraq. Oh my God, the deal fell apart with Iran, which it will, by the way, because they're not going to accept the nonsense premise that Trump is running with, and can't make up his mind in regards to what that even is, because he's been escalating his demands over time. What started off as nuclear enrichment is now the Libyan model, as they like to call it. So I don't know if this other stuff is chumming the water in order to give cover for Israel to attack Iran, with the U.S. saying, well, our hands aren't on it, or for that matter, to come up with a context by which they can justify an attack on Iran. And one last point. Just because Trump may be at odds with Netanyahu doesn't mean he's at odds with Israel. He's still giving them weapons. He's still giving them money. He's still defending them in front of the ICJ, basically arguing that Israel has a right to starve 2.2 million people. So what am I to become away with this? Like, I take a black hat on some degree, saying and being very cynical about what I see as, okay, these negotiations seem fraudulent considering you're maximizing your demands in a way that they're never going to accept.
And there's so much in there. We have to also look at, as a comparison, his tariff policy. He issued these huge tariffs on countries and then backed off. Then again, issued them, say, oh, it's a 90-day pause. And then, oh, no, we're not going to do that. It's going to be much less. I think it's the same with his demands with Iran. He's going to say, this is what we have to have. This is our red line. And anything other than this, we're going to bomb you. Well, we changed our mind. Maybe there's, we'll backtrack in this. So he sees it apparently as being a big deal maker, and this is his negotiation skill. That's what he's a genius at, self-proclaimed. So he's making these outrageous demands of Iran, as he made them regarding the tariffs against Canada and China and several other countries, and then back down. So I think we're going to see the same thing here. I think he wants to see the reaction that Iran has, and also the reaction that Israel has to Iran's reaction, and then he'll move from there. It's all posturing with him. He and his neocon associates must know that Iran is not going to surrender its ability to defend itself. And that's basically what they're asking for. So, and they also must know that Iran is going to hold tight to a certain line because it's been down this road with the United States before. And there was an agreement made, the JCPOA. The United States never fully implemented the sanctions removal that it promised to, but Iran maintained its agreement to the letter, and that was certified to the president every 3 months by Congress, and yet the United States violated it. Trump at the time, during his first term, said that he was going to violate it, and Iran would come crawling back for a better deal. Well, that of course didn't happen. The Iranian people are used to living with sanctions and dealing with them, and they understand that. So for Iran to re-enter another agreement with the United States, it's got to be ironclad, and Iran is the one that's going to be calling the shots.
That's my issue. If the U.S. knows that as a flat fact, meaning they are going to stick with a particular line, and they're taking a cadence and a position that we are going to bomb you, we're going to bomb you, we're going to bomb you, we're going to attack, that is a hell of a ledge to back away from. and not just a hell of a ledge to back away from. They're going to be screaming, "You've been had. You've been, you know." I mean, look at what they're saying now. What do they call Witkoff, Ayatollah's man, or something like that? Like the way they've been attacking Witkoff as a Russian stooge. They've been attacking him as what, the Mullah's man or something. Like they have been hitting him relentlessly. Trump still uses him, but they hit him relentlessly. And so I guess my thing is when Witkoff came back and he was talking very similar to Arghachi, foreign minister for Iran, he got hit for it. And then a day later, all of a sudden it was the Libya model. Like that's a hell of a cliff to walk back. You have to walk back the fact that you were going to attack him, and you have to walk back the fact of these maximalist demands. And you're going to have to somehow spin whatever you come up with as a win, even though is effectively what Iran was asking for in the very beginning. That's a hell of a cliff.
It is one that they shouldn't be on in the first place. But walking back from that, as you said, can be difficult. But remember, this is Donald Trump we're dealing with. He will spin any defeat into a victory somehow. A few months ago, his spokeswoman talked about the decisive victory he got in November of last year. He got like 48% of the vote, and Kamala Harris got 46%. This was not a decisive victory, but that's what they're calling it. So if anything, even you showed the headline with the New York Times earlier that he's saying he had this victory. He sure showed that's the one. He showed the Houthi militia who's in charge. Well, that's what he's saying. It's nonsense, but his base eats it up. They say, "Oh yeah, he did great things there. I don't know exactly what he did, but he did something really good. He said he did," and it's going to be the same thing with Iran. Hopefully, I'm not.
I don't know. I got to be honest. I don't know. I mean, like I have given the black hat and white hat version of this, like a what you see is what you get. Like I've had guests come on that agrees with you, but they would say, "Look, there is division in this team. He's incompetent, and he's a bumbling idiot on the issue of foreign policy, and so he's all over the place. And what you're seeing, and what you're interpreting as, okay, he's lying about this. He's trying to foot an attack. It's just incompetence, not planned, five-dimensional chess. I have other people who say Donald Trump is setting up to attack Iran every bit as much as George Bush did Iraq. And all of this is a playbook, Which Path to Persia, where they articulate all of this. We're going to have peace negotiations. The negotiations are going to blow up. We're going to blame Iran. We're going to let Israel attack. We're going to act like we had nothing to do with it. Or we may even help Israel in an attack using the justification that Iran blew up the agreements. And so when I see that, and I say, okay, well, that looks like this. I'll give you an example. What is it? The plan that Bush was running with to restructure the Middle East using American power. The American, I can't think of the name of it. All that stuff was playbook also, where they were like, we're going to use American power to reshape the project for a new American century. Where their thought was, we're going to reshape the Middle East using American foreign power. And you get Bush with his ramp up to Iraq. You get Dick Cheney behind the scenes saying, we're going to go to Iran in 6 months or whatever ridiculous number that Dick Cheney was talking about. But this is the way they think. And if indeed this stuff is written down and they're seemingly following a script, it gives me pause.
With good reason. What I think some people in the administration recognize is that Iran is not Iraq. The population is much larger. The military is far more powerful. Iran also has powerful allies in the world, and that the invasion of Iraq was difficult enough. Remember George Bush saying our goals have been achieved, or whatever it was he said on the aircraft carrier, and it dragged on for 3 more years with what he called the insurgency, which
was a mission accomplished. Big banner, mission accomplished, right?
Right, and that was just, but that, and then the people in Iraq continued to resist the U.S. occupation, and it went on for years, and it's still not. Iraq is still unsettled all these years later. An invasion of Iran, or any kind of attack on Iran, is going to be far different. It will Iran will retaliate not just against Israel if Israel's one that attacks, but in other U.S. interests. Iran is surrounded by U.S. military bases, and they would all be targets. Russia would probably get involved. China may get involved. Also, comes like Lebanon, Yemen, Syria. Syria, of course, is in a state of flux right now, but they are going to get involved in attacking Israel. So Israel will be fighting war on several fronts. There is no way, if that happens, the United States isn't going to get involved. So what we're talking about is someone is about to light a fuse, and at the end of that fuse is a huge bomb that's going to explode the Middle East and is going to drag the United States and other areas of the world into this. I hope, and I'm not confident in this, but I hope that there are some people in the White House and in the cabinet who recognize that this is absolutely foolhardy and that the United States will not come out of this well, and that the destruction, the amount of lives that will be lost will be just astronomical.
That's the rational argument. And I know people give that rational argument. And then I forget the gentleman I was talking to, he was like, I know you take issue with the rational argument. It's not that I take issue with the rational argument. I think rational people tend to follow a rational line of thought in regards to, okay, what is the cost, benefit, et cetera. Ideologues are different. Ideologues are different. Like we were talking about Zionists, right? Destroying all of Gaza. And it's like, okay, what are you going to do? You're going to kill 2.2 million people? How are you really going to do that? Is that your objective? Or how are you going to really kick all of these people out? You're bombing tents, you're murdering children. Ideologues, regular people, and people who have a conscience don't do stuff like that. Wouldn't even count stuff like that. Stuff like that would bother them. An ideologue, not so much. So I guess it depends on who's in his administration, who's in his ear. And I keep saying, I don't know what's in Trump's mind, because I think that is the telltale. Because if you're right, and Trump is like, I don't want to start larger wars, meaning I may bomb Yemen, but even in the New York Times piece, it points out that his appetite for pain in that conflict was very minimal. Like he pulled out within 30 days, like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm not, these guys are about to take down. They nearly knocked a fighter jet out the sky, an F-35. And if you're the president and you see that and you think to yourself, what if they did? Like, or you think to yourself, what if they hit that aircraft carrier? Then what? And that thing sunk on my watch. And so if that is in Trump's mind, then maybe you're right. Maybe he's like, my penchant for how much I'm willing to carry as a bag, it's not, even Yemen, let alone what is going to happen if I bomb Iran. You may be right. I'm just saying that is a hell of a cliff.
It is. And the other thing is, if that aircraft carrier had been hit and sunk, it wouldn't have been his fault. Somehow it would have been the aircraft.
All right, Hexef would have been fired.
Right. That's the way he operates. That nothing that goes wrong is his fault. Everything that goes right is his to his credit. And if things even go wrong, in his mind they went right, such as the so-called peace agreement with Yemen. It didn't go well for the United States. They just said, okay, we'll stop bombing you, you stop bombing us. Okay, that's good. But Yemen said we're gonna keep doing everything we've been doing. And Trump said, that's fine, just don't bomb us, okay? And that's a great victory. So that's the way he operates.
He came out, declared victory. We destroyed them. We, eliminated a threat. We did blah, blah, blah. And the newsman was like, we're getting conflicting reports. So right off the moment that you hear that, right? Like, you're like, okay, Trump's lying. Like, I don't need to hear anything else from the newsman. We're getting your conflicting reports. It sounds like they're still going to keep attacking Israel. Well, I just know they don't want anything to do with us. Like, right. Okay, fair enough. That means, yes, they're still going to be doing that.
Yeah.
There is a conversation that is taking place that Donald Trump is trying to come up with some kind of plan for Gaza after the fact. Now, Drop Zone News reported this, that there were back channel talks between Hamas and Trump, where they were trying to come up with this idea of, okay, what is this going to look like after the war, with the idea of Trump, I guess, trying to put a pin in the war. And at this point, I would imagine he would have to use diplomatic pressure to do so. By you're not getting the money, you're not getting the missiles, you're not getting whatever. And look, I don't doubt that he would be the guy to do that. I've heard a conversation where he was talking with a reporter, and he was talking about Mahmoud Abbas. And he says, he came across like my grandfather. And he says, I was shocked to find out that they really did want to end the conflict. I had no idea. I thought it was the opposite. I talked to Netanyahu, and within a minute, I was like, you don't want to end this, do you? So regardless of the way he acts now, that is in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anybody would do it, his ego is of such that he may, look, I'm trying to end this. I want the Peace Prize. We're going to put a pin in this. We're going to come up with something after the fact for Gaza, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He may be that guy. I don't know. I guess I'm saying they're trying to come up with some sustainable solution after the fact. And I got to be honest, when I see pictures like this, where they're panning what it looks like in Gaza,
Mm-hmm.
they destroyed everything. Like 90% of the buildings no longer exist. Who's going to repair this? I mean, that's astonishing.
It's just what Israel has been allowed to do is, to say it's criminal is just such an understatement.
It is, yeah.
How anyone can deny this is genocide is beyond me. It's going to take trillions of dollars to rebuild Gaza, which the international community has a moral obligation to do, because the international community has allowed this to happen. So this has to end immediately. It's needed to never have started, but it should have ended a long time ago. But when it ends, then, as I said, the international community must step up with humanitarian aid immediately, instantly, and then a comprehensive plan that will be put together very quickly to clear the debris, recover the bodies, hundreds of, or at least tens of thousands of them that are still under the rubble, give those people the decent, respectful burial, or some of the bodies are obliterated. They don't exist anymore.
I mean,
But
they're in trash bags in some of these cases.
they're in trash bags. People were handed trash bags with body parts. Said, this is probably your child. Bury this as if it were your child. Now, I can't even comprehend the sorrow, the anger, the emotion I would have with that. I multiply this by 100,000. But the international community, you just showed a horrifying picture of what Gaza looks like today, and it must be rebuilt. And as far as how it's going to be governed, that must be left to the people of Palestine to decide, not to the United Nations, not to the U.S. government, certainly. There may have to be a peacekeeping force there for a short time, and certainly to supervise the rebuilding. But this is Palestine. It needs to be, the government needs to be determined by the Palestinians. Self-determination is a key concept that the United States is always proclaiming, except doesn't seem to apply to the Palestinians.
I don't even know if we believe self-determination. That's what we say. It's not what we do.
Oh, not at all.
I mean, like, when we're trying to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, we're not talking about self-determination. Or we're, have kill squads in South America, we're not talking about self-determination. I guess my thing is, I don't know what that looks like. Like, I don't know what it's like to lose, let's say, 150,000 people, women and children, 2/3 of which. And then you're supposed to go back to some sense of normality, living beside the people who did it. That's rough.
Mm-hmm.
That's just rough.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're talking about a two-state solution. There was a rumor that Donald Trump was going to recognize Palestine as a state. Okay, he came out and said, that's nonsense. I thought that was nonsense on his face. But what works, though? Is it just a one state at this point, one man, one vote? Israel is never going to accept that.
Israel will never accept that because that Israel a few years ago declared itself the nation state of the Jewish people and only the Jewish people. And there's a significant Arab population there now, but by bringing in the West Bank and Gaza, then the Jewish population would be either equal or a minority. So that's not a solution. Now, you mentioned the rumor that Trump was going to recognize Palestine. That is possible, but what I've heard is that he will recognize a part of the West Bank as Palestine and the rest of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip as Israel. So that's not recognition of Palestine. So now we have to remember the U.S. president doesn't set the borders, but as when he moved the capital of, when he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel rather than Tel Aviv, some other countries did also, not many, but a few did. So if he were to recognize a small portion of the the West Bank, which would then be completely surrounded by Israel. If we were to recognize that as Palestine, that would only cause more problems than currently exist. But to get to your other question about what governance looks like, there has to be an international, I want to say force, but I don't mean a military force, but an international organization that comes in providing housing, food, medicine, and so on, and helping the people with the help that they need. And then as debris is cleared and even temporary housing is built, even just tents for the short term, so people have something to live in. Right now they're living in rubble. They're gathering together rugs or something that they find and living there. Then after that, once people are stabilized, then there needs to be a vote of the people, and they can decide then how they will be governed.
And if they choose Hamas, then what?
Well, the world needs to know now that Hamas was duly elected
Yes, they were.
in elections that international observers felt were fair.
Yeah.
And they were, because they knew that Mahmoud Abbas was doing nothing for them, nothing to help them. So Hamas initially opened schools and hospitals and was really working for the people until both Israel and Fatah, Abbas's party, started blocking it. So then, of course, Hamas became more militant because they were voted in to help the people, and their hands were being tied by their own people in the West Bank, by Abbas. So Hamas may get elected, but they will have a platform like any other party has a platform. And if the people recognize that that's what they want, then that should be it.
By the way, I'm not saying that negatively. I'm saying that in the sense of how the U.S. or Israel is going to look at that. Look, it is the most rational thing in the world to resist. And, any group, African Americans in America, for example, when they were under pressure, what did they do? They formed institutions, political institutions, militaristic institutions, in order to push back on the fact of what was coming after. Basically, I am what you made me, in a sense. And Hamas is what they made them. What was the relationship between Fatah and Hamas? I know there was a certain level of animosity. Was that animosity pushed by Israel, considering that they were effectively pushing or controlling Abbas's party? Abbas was, I don't say a collaborator, but a collaborator.
I say a collaborator. Abbas is a traitor to the Palestinian people and to the nation of Palestine. And people know that a few years ago, when elections were scheduled to be held in Palestine after many, many years, Abbas canceled them. It was anticipated he would get about 19% of the vote. So that's the level of support that he had at that time, and I'm sure it's less now. So he was blocking anything that Hamas wanted to do for the people in Gaza because he wanted to gain power. We also have to remember that Abbas has security coordination with Israel.
Exactly.
Now, one of the ways an occupied nation can resist the occupation is by making it difficult to occupy. With the Palestinian leadership in Fatah, with Abbas coordinating with the oppressor, that removes that very valuable tool from the oppressed people, from the occupied people. So he is hated, as he should be. And if the elections were held today, certainly Hamas would win. But if this genocide could end and humanitarian groups could be given responsibility for rebuilding Gaza and providing immediate humanitarian aid, then the parties, Fatah and Hamas, could state their platforms. People could look at what they've done in the past, how Fatah has worked with hand in hand with Israel to oppress the people, and how Hamas has tried to help the people. And we'll see what the vote shows. But again, the United States wouldn't like Hamas getting into office. But if the United States is going to be serious about supporting self-determination, it would have to accept it. Not that it would, but it should.
One last thing before I let you go. There was There's this question about whether or not the local population blames Hamas for what's taking place.
The local population is suffering horribly, as we know.
Yes.
But they recognize that a couple of things. One, that now Palestine is on everyone's radar. For decades, people just ignored what was happening in Palestine. But now everyone is looking at it. People are seeing Israel for what it is, a genocidal, a racist, apartheid regime, and they are the world is rejecting that. So while the people are suffering horribly, the sense I get from my contacts in the Gaza Strip is not that they're blaming Hamas. Right now, they're just trying to survive, and they know that things were bad before October 7th. They may be worse now, but it was only a matter of time before they got this bad anyway. So they're hopeful that something better will come from all this. But the suffering, the loss of life, the people, children, infants, babies starving to death. Imagine as a parent watching your child starve to death and you are helpless to do anything about it. This is only bringing more hostility towards Israel and the United States, because they're the ones that are mainly responsible for this.
I think, I showed that video in the very beginning of that mom finally hearing from her kid. Why would Palestinians care about their kids either, any less? Like, that's the wild part to me, right? It's like they can identify with, like, oh my God, I get to speak to my son. I get to speak to my child who's been in captivity for all of this time. And you can see her reaction to it. And it's like, okay, so why would a Palestinian feel any less about their son or daughter?
Absolutely. And there are thousands of political prisoners, Palestinian political prisoners in Israel. Why aren't they called hostages? There are children as young as 12 years old who are held without access to family or legal services. Why aren't they being displayed for the world to see? Sometimes they're released and they come out in terrible condition. Why aren't their heartwarming reunifications with their families shown on TV? It's because there is this belief that because they're Arab, because they're Muslim, they are somehow lesser. And this is the racist attitude that is prevalent in Western media. And we're seeing it in real time every day.
But can we say that about Arab media also? And maybe not Arab media, but it's not like those governments did anything. I mean, Ansar Allah is the only government that tried to do anything and paid a heavy price for doing so. And so for all this talk about Arabs in regards to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, pick random country, they didn't do squat.
That is true. And that is partly because of U.S. influence. We don't know what the U.S. threatened them with if they did anything, or promised them if they didn't. Now, those countries that signed the so-called Abraham Accords a few years ago under Trump's first administration, they are, for the most part, dictatorships. Some of them have banned any pro-Palestine demonstrations in their countries. So we know that, like the U.S. government currently and in the past, what they're interested in is power and profits, not human rights and international law. So that is why there's been that great neglect.
Wow. Robert, this has been a fantastic interview. And the numbers have just went higher and higher the more that you talked. So the public is definitely interested. I have to be honest with you. This is not an easy topic to cover.
No, it's not. I'm sure it's not.
And it's usually, for me, I usually have to enfold it into something else, because ultimately it's just misery otherwise. Like, Drop Zone News covers it a lot, but it's like at a certain point, it's like, how many dead kids can you watch? How many people get shot? How many people thrown off rooftops? How many bombs can you watch? Like, it's such a litany of misery that it becomes almost like one note of pain. I don't know if you've ever watched Black Mirror. I'm sorry, not let you go after this. I'm a sucker for that show. I love that show. But there is there at the very end, I forget which season, I think it's season 5 or 6, where they have these, chips where they can take the consciousness of somebody out, and the consciousness is a separate thing, even though it's still the same person. And what they were talking about, like the preliminary technology in order to build those chips. And one of the preliminary technologies was be able to take an instant of a person. And so they would what they started to do, this kind of sick thing, was you can watch a person get electrocuted as if it's the real first time in perpetuity. And basically, you can enshrine somebody in pain forever with their consciousness being in that pain as one note in perpetuity forever. Like, it's that, right? Like, when you're watching it, it feels like that.
Yeah.
It's like you're starving people. You're making people die of thirst. You're having babies die. You're bombing hospitals. It's this one note of pain and misery that's just gone on for decades. I mean, I know they want to say a year and a half, but let's be honest, this has been taking place for
Right.
70 years.
Yeah.
So, no, man, thank you for this. I really appreciate you coming on. Great explanation, great breakdown. And like I said, the
Thank
audience enjoyed it. Robert Fatina. Is it Fatima? Fatima. That's what it is. Fatima.
Fatina.
He's author, journalist, activist, working for peace and prosperity and social justice. He is author of the book Settler Colonialism in Palestine and Kashmir. Robert, man, thank you for this. I really appreciate it. Be safe, okay?
Thank you. You too.
All righty. That was a